Okay. This is Objects Update 2024. So, as I mentioned, SAP has this document that they put out for all their products called a Statement of Direction, abbreviated as SOD, S-O-D. Right? So, not a bad word in the SAP language, a bad word everywhere else. Okay. So their statement of direction for business intelligence analytics has changed quite a lot over the last few years. And in the summer of 2022, they put out a statement of direction that basically talked about a 10-year plus roadmap for business objects. And now they've just released an extension to that statement of direction in May of 2024, where basically they're saying, yes, we are continuing 10 years plus out there, and we are also going to be changing the naming of the releases and the way we're going to support them going forward as well. The good news, of course, is both with the 2022 statement of direction and now the 2024 extension to that, business objects is not going anywhere. It's here to stay, and it will be supported for the next decade and beyond. And there will be continual new releases coming out on a frequent basis. So it's here, and no end of life is the key item here. If you actually read the statement of direction itself, you have to understand that companies like SAP, it's a bit like the United Nations trying to write a document that every country will agree to. Okay, so when SAP puts a statement of direction together, you've got all these competing product groups and so forth within SAP, and they all have to agree to it. So what ends up coming out of it is garbage and gobbledygook, where they're kind of saying these things and you're saying, why are you saying that? Why are you saying this, right? Because it's politically the correct thing that they have to say, as opposed to just giving it to us in plain English. And so I often will cut through that red tape, much to the annoyance of the powers that be within SAP, and just get down to the hardcore stuff and say, no, this is what it really means. This is what they're telling us. So basically, the next release of Business Objects will be called BI 2025. And so this is a departure from BI 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, and all the service packs that came along with them. And they're now moving more to the Microsoft model of naming the release and the year that they actually are planning to release it in. And so the next release of Business Objects will be called BI 2025. It will come out as a controlled release in December of this year. And so they are looking right now for candidates, don't raise your hand, trust me, who would be willing to try out the new release right away for a couple of months before they officially make it available to everybody, which will probably happen more towards the end of the first quarter of 2025. But realistically, any of us who have worked with business objects, and especially those who have worked with it over the last 10 plus years, know very well you don't take a new release of business objects for at least a year. You let other people cut their teeth on it and figure out a lot of those bugs before you move to it. And so, although there could be some very compelling use cases because of the new functionality, which I'll talk about at the end here, to go to it, you probably will be wise to wait until about 2026 to start thinking about moving to BI 2025. So these new releases are going to, instead of the old model of BI 4.2, 4.3, where you have 5 years plus 2 years of priority 1 support, they're going to move to this model of 2 years plus 1 year of priority one support. So each release as it comes out will have full support for 3 years. And then the next release will be called BI 2027. Okay, and that will be really equivalent to a service pack or a couple of service pack releases that you've been used to in the past. So you'll go from BI 2025, and then a couple of years later, they will release BI 2027, which will come out in December of 2026. And then 2 years later, they'll release BI 2029. And then 2 years later, they'll release BI 2031. Okay. Now, again, in the statement of direction, they don't mention anything beyond BI 2027. But when I was in Paris last month in front of the product group, they did. So that was another one of those United Nations things, right, that got, taken out in the shuffle for the official statement of direction. But I can assure you those releases are coming because I've seen I've spoken to the development teams and I know they're working on it. Back to BI 4.3, we just saw the release of Service Pack 4, which came out in December of last year. Lots of functionality. I'm going to show you some of it in a minute. And the last release of BI 4.3, the last Service Pack release will be called SPO5, and that will be pushed back until the middle of next year. But that will not have, like all the other service packs, lots of new functionality in it. It will just have patches and fixes. So it'll just be a maintenance-only release. And that will be the last service pack of BI 4.3. And then BI 4.3 will be fully supported until the end of 2025. And then at the beginning of 2026, it goes into 2 years of priority one support, so that it remains supported until the end of 2027. Why is this important? It's important because of things like we were just talking about old universes like UMB, because those will not be supported in BI 2025, 27, 29, or any of the releases going forward. And so people who are still running, right, with their old UMBs can continue to do so until the end of 2027, but if they want to move on to the 2025, 2027, 2029 releases, they will need to get them converted to UNXs. Okay, so here is my new roadmap. And you can see here, I move this over to where we are now, 2024. Yep. You can see BI 4.2 goes out of support at the end of this year. Is there anyone here still running BI 4.2? Okay.
Lots of it.
Lots of it. So that's good for you to know, because basically it will become unsupported.
Yeah, we know about it, but haven't figured out the plan yet.
Talk to us, we can help you, right? Okay, so that goes out of support. BI 4.3 continues, as I said, through to the end of 2025, and then 2 years of priority one support. Okay, and this little thing here is SPO5, which will get released in the middle of next year. So meanwhile, BI 2025, right, will come out kind of in those two phases, first in December, then probably the main release coming in more like March of 2025, and will run for 2 years of the priority one support. I suspect we'll shift these a little knowing SAP. And then 2027 will come out, and then 2029 will come out. And so, as I said, it will just continue from that point onwards. But you see what I'm talking about, moving to this 2+1 model moving forward. Okay, so the strategy from SAP's perspective is, obviously moving now to this new release of BI 2025. It will be available both on-premise and in the cloud. So you can continue to decide where you put it. For cloud-based versions, there are two offerings. One is you can put it in your own private cloud, which is the most popular option that everyone is doing. And right now, I would say about 25% of business objects customers are running BO in the cloud on their own private cloud. Okay, the other option is too expensive to even consider, which is SAP hosting it for you, you know, on hyperscale in the cloud, where SAP takes over, you know, doing the updates of the software and so forth. You know, to get started in that world, it's 7 figures and above.
That's
Okay?
true for private, business objects, private cloud?
No.
You're talking about SAP.
I'm talking about private cloud edition, business objects private cloud edition by SAP, by SAP. Right? There's only 2 customers here in North America using it, and they're both extremely unhappy. So you really don't want to go there. You really don't want to go there, trust me.
Right.
The problem was that they didn't do their homework properly. And so because they're hosting it, because they're suddenly responsible, all these legal people came in and said, oh, you got to do this, you got to do that. So they had to hire cloud architects and all sorts of security architects and all these things just to host somebody's system, meaning, well, we're going to get our money back for that, right? And so they just upped all the license fees to astronomical numbers, you know, where it just becomes cost prohibitive. Doesn't make any sense at all. So it's been in my opinion, it's been a failure. But it doesn't stop you from taking your existing on-premise business objects licenses and moving them to your own private cloud. And that's what people are doing. That makes perfect sense. And again, everybody asks me, well, when should we do that? And the answer is very simple. When the majority of data the business objects is accessing is in the cloud, with business objects to the cloud. Okay, makes sense, right? That's from a performance and security standpoint. So the new releases from BI 2025 upwards will focus on the core products, which is basically web intelligence, IDT universe design, crystal reports, and analysis for Office and then the platform itself. So a lot of the superfluous products, Mira, you know, Live Office, are going to be going away. Right? They will no longer be supported in the BI 2025 releases going forward. And they will provide clear migration paths for all of those other products. And they will only support Windows and Linux platforms. So they're getting rid of support of Solaris and AIX and some of the other platforms there as well. Be careful, anyone here run Crystal Reports? Okay, only Windows, no Linux. Okay, so Crystal Reports is Windows only, which is really funny to me because with their private cloud edition, they decided to go 100% Linux.
Nice. Makes sense.
And so one of the first customers they got had Crystal Reports.
I think they giggled.
So they had to set up a container in Linux for Windows and Crystal Reports, and that has caused them all sorts of issues. Right? Right? So anyway. Okay. So SP4 is the most current release of BI 4.3, the current release of business objects. A lot of really nice new functionality. The most significant, the one I'm going to talk about, is the ability of what we call the data tab, Web Intelligence Data Mode. We talked about it in SP3, but unfortunately they only delivered half of it in SP3. And we have advised customers not to utilize this feature in SP3, only to use it in SP4 because you'll get very frustrated. It's only half done in SP3, it's fully done in SP4. But basically what it is it's the ability now to take different data sources into web intelligence and merge and transform them yourself so that you can perform transforms on the data itself inside of web intelligence and merge those data sets together. And in addition to that, you can profile your data. So it's like a little mini ETL tool for the business user or the report user. And it's very, very powerful. Yes,
Might that be a suggestion to get around the multi-source universe
it is.
issue?
It absolutely is. You're spot on because although you're quite right, multi-source universes are going away as well. But if you have this capability, you probably really don't need to be using multi-source universes. Although you'll see that SAP says the answer to replacing multi-source universes is to do it back in the database.
I saw that
Right.
just this morning on that.
Yeah. Right. But you're quite right. This would actually also help enormously. Changes to Crystal reports in SPO4. Crystal reports will now support UNXs. So universes. I was talking to a very large Crystal reports customer in California a couple of weeks ago about this, and he came up with a really interesting idea, which I hadn't really thought about very much, which he said, part of the problem we have with Crystal reports is that we keep, embedding all this SQL, stored procedures and different things inside of our Crystal reports, and it's a nightmare to maintain it. He said, I'm thinking that I might want to consolidate that and use something like a universe, right, in order to make the maintenance of my Crystal reports easier going forward, which is a great idea. Makes a lot of sense. Also, now you're going to have a new viewer for Crystal reports as well. It's now part of the Fiori viewer that you've already seen in web intelligence, and a few other minor bits there. So let's move on to the data mode, because this is a really, really powerful feature. And I'm going to show you a very, very short demo here put together by Roxanne, who did a much better job of presenting it than I will, but you've got me. So we'll get Roxanne next. So let's see if I can bring this up and drag it over. Over here. There you go.
Big spec are they on SP4 now?
400. So 400 is the latest fix pack on SP4, and we would definitely recommend going to that. Okay, there's been problems with 100, 200, and 300.
SP3 redux.
Okay, so let's get started on this. So here we are, Webby, and we've got two different data sources here. So over here, I've got my goals by sales rep, and that's coming from an Excel spreadsheet. And here I've got another data source I'm pulling in, revenue by sales rep, which is coming through a universe from a database. So what I would like to do is to merge, right, these two data sources together. But what we're going to do first is, if we go up here, now you will see, as well as reading and design and structure mode, I have a new mode called data, right? And so if I now click on data mode, it takes me into a new area of web intelligence that will be new to you. This. Oh, right? So now, right, it's showing my data source, but it's also got this nice little script flow at the bottom here, right, which is showing me, here are my two data sources, number of rows I've got in them, and so forth. And they're completely independent, they're not tied together in any shape or form at this point. Okay, and so I can click on either one of those flows and it will immediately above, right, show me what I've actually got inside of them here. Okay, so I can click on one, see one, I can click on the other, and see the other here. Okay, so I got a bit ahead of myself. Really hard to do this without doing it on my screen. So I can turn on the profile, and when I profile this particular profiling the revenue data set here, I can immediately see the count, right, of distincts. I can also, right, quickly see how many of each group I've got in the different rows. So this is a wonderful tool for quickly profiling your data and figuring out, right, what you've actually got in the data. Obviously, these are very small sets that I'm working with right here, but this becomes obviously very useful when you're dealing with much larger data sets. And I can click on any of these columns here, and now I can do a replace. So I can actually transform the data. I'm not transforming it back in the database, I'm transforming it in my workspace here inside of Web Intelligence. But now I have more control. So I can go in now and actually replace, right, different things in the data here. Okay, and so I'm going to replace, you know, the state of Oregon with OR, and I can go ahead now and replace Arizona with AZ. Simple little changes, but obviously, you know, I could change them to something different as well. So I'm doing transforming now of my data using the data mode in the new data mode in Web Intelligence. Okay, now let's say I want to bring those data sets together, because that's where it becomes really interesting. So now I want to create a cube. And when I create the cube, right, and now I can give it a name, I can decide which is going to be the primary cube, and I can define how I want to merge those two data sources together. So I will change the name of, give it a name for the new merge cube, and here is where it gets really interesting. So now I have all these capabilities for joining my data. I can do a left join, a full join, an inner join, a left join without intersection, a full join without intersection, or an append cube. Okay, and I forget what all of them mean, even though
Roxanne's here.
even though I have recently read the manga guide to databases, right, which is my Bible for reminding me of SQL and all the things I need to know in SQL.
I think SP3, it's only the left join, right? Is that
And append. And append. Right, so you have the left join and the append. Right, but now in SP4 you get the full join, the inner join, and the intersection joins as well. Okay, which is much more powerful. And Roxanne will be the first to tell you that the best way to do it is just to play with it and try out all of them and see which one gives you the desired result. Right, because it's that simple to do. So we'll go ahead here and we will select the join we want to do, and then we will decide what do we want to join on. Okay, so now we can go in and define our keys that we want to join the two sets of data with. Okay, so we go in there, define our keys, okay, and then when we're done, okay, we can profile the data. Okay, we'll quickly merge the data together, and look at this, I got a null here. So I'm saying, well, I didn't want that. So maybe I picked the wrong type of joint. So I can go back and redefine that. Okay, because I don't want those nulls there. And so I'll go back in, and this time, instead of a left join, I will select an inner join. Okay, and when I do the inner join, yay, I got rid of the nulls. So now I've got the data set merged together as I want it. Okay, and if I, this horrible thing out of the way, you can see here. A little clearer, right? Okay, that I've merged these two together, okay? And I also have the option, right, to actually export these merged data sets to Excel now and to XLS. And I can use them in yet another join, right? And do some really interesting things, right, with this as well, which you couldn't do in the SP3 version. Very annoying. So there we go. So basically, we now have our data set and our merged data set together, and then we can go ahead and do whatever we want to do with that. Okay. So that 2-minute demo only took me 12.5 minutes to explain to you.
Pretty good.
I'm getting better, Roxanne, aren't I? I'm really getting better.
I'm impressed.
Well, I think the part of the caution for not doing it in SB3 too is that once they roll it out in SB4, you have to redo whatever they did in 3.
Right. Yes,
Not just a limitation, it's redo it.
it is. It's supposed to do it. Yes,
Mhm.
yes.
Just
There's
another
another room.
observation, you know how everybody's using business objects to forklift data out of the database, then they just put it over in Power BI.
Yes,
Yeah.
It goes on all the time. This is kind of like doing that, but with business stuff.
correct.
I'm,
Correct.
I'm new to this, so you know, that's what I see.
Yeah,
So why do you really need Power BI in this case? Maybe, is this just as powerful as Power BI?
absolutely. In fact, I mean, Power BI and Tableau do have this kind of data profiling and data manipulation capabilities today. So customers who are using both business objects and Tableau or business objects and Power BI probably are doing some of this in Power BI on Tableau, but now you can do it in business objects itself. So,
Like I do a lot of this currently in Power BI and Power Query,
right,
but it'll show you profiles at the top, like this percentage are null, this percentage are errors, right? I didn't see any of that. Is that another layer to this that will be before? And you know, you have a small data set.
Yeah.
What if you have a
Yes,
sizable,
yes.
you know, 100,000 rows?
it's a good point. Yes, I think there will be. There will be more like that. There's, what I saw, because I was asking about how they've got lots of plans for data mode in BI 2025 and beyond. And one of the first things they're going to bring out in BI 2025 is to add the formula editor to it as well. Right, which will be really cool because then you can use the formula editor to manipulate the data as well. But to your point, yes, they do need stuff like that to show the percentages and make it easier for you and so forth. So they're getting there, and they definitely have lots of plans ahead for them.
Was it 2025 or 2027 where they're gonna be striving to put more visualizations in there as well?
2025.
Yeah.
And I can't show those to you, but I can talk to those. You got those as well. Okay. All right, now. Get rid of my screen now. Okay, let me go back to. Oh.
You're trying to get back to your presentation.
I'm trying to get back, I'm on my presentation here, but I can't get this off the main screen. So,
I think it's the on.
let's just further up that area.
Yeah.
Okay. Like that. Okay, so the next set of slides just describe what I've been showing you as far as the demo is concerned. That you can have a parent cube and a combined cube, and then you can even merge combined cubes together as well. There's a lot of other enhancements in terms of the transformations. More actions added there. Refresh time of the query can be shown as well. So a lot of these things have been added at SP4. The next major function we came out with SP4 is to have the ability now to refresh Webby as a data source. How many people here use Web Intelligence as a data source? Okay, so this is a great feature that came out right away with SP3. But basically what it is the ability to use Web Intelligence as a data source for other Web Intelligence reports. So you could kind of have this master Web Intelligence report, and you could make it available to, say, the HR department because it's an HR report. And then they can put a universe on top of that report and then create other reports out of that master report, which is really cool because it makes it very easy then, right, to get people more involved in being doing self-service and getting their own information out without having to look at something very complicated. They can make their own simple reports or derived reports from this master report. But part of the problem was that you couldn't do the refresh automatically, where when the master document refreshed, it would refresh all of the child documents as well. And now that feature is available so that you have the ability now to keep the data up to date on refresh, which makes it a much more useful capability now, because you can have automatic refreshes happening to the child documents.
Well, that sounds very similar to what MicroStrategy had for a long time. You use reports within reports.
Uh-huh.
So it sounds very similar to that.
You could always use reports within reports in business objects, but not with using the semantic layer in between. So that's the big difference with this. And because the semantic layer itself is so powerful, right, you could just, drag and drop to create derivatives, almost instant. Improvements in report interactions as well. You can dynamically hide a column in a table. You can use the intra-document link, and the filter can be applied to input controls of the targeted report. They have made some enhancements to the geo mapping so that you kind of have this this mini map, right? That can give you the overall picture while you drill into the detail in the main part of the map. And also they finally got rid of that ridiculous restriction of only showing cities that had over 100,000 people. It's kind of made your map look a bit silly. Knew there was something there, but we didn't have over 100,000 people, so we wouldn't put it on. But not getting too far ahead of myself, in BI 2025, they will have full integration with Google Maps in Web. So then you won't need any of this stuff because you can just use Google Maps inside of Web Intelligence. They brought back the send to actions now as well. That's included in 4.3. You can do search and highlight of a specific string. There's been some user interaction improvements around the build panel. There's also been changes to numeric date and time display format. The one that everyone was waiting for was the compact for millions. So you can now have 1.2 million as an M instead of having to write it all out, display it all out rather. And you can group prompts together as well. There's been a few improvements to the semantic layer for performance, but they're minor. And there was a few improvements to the platform as well, but again, there was nothing really big there or significant. So let's talk about BI 2025 and what's really coming there. The big change with BI 2025, you already saw a kind of a big leap in terms of the UI, because between 4.2 and 4.3, we had a completely rewritten and new user interface for web intelligence. Well, it goes a whole step further with BI 2025. But what they've done is they've created, they first of all tied into the UI5 component library, so that all of those components now suddenly become available inside of Webby. So you have things like scrollable tables, you have, integration with Google Maps, you have all these things now that are just components now inside of Webby. And when I saw it last month in France, I said, that looks like Power BI. I said, that looks a bit like Tableau actually as well, because it's more like now in Webby, what you're doing is just dragging things on the screen with the data, and instantly you've got a map, or you've got your data being displayed in a bar chart, and stuff like that. So it looks very, very similar to that. But they created a whole new set of components, which they have called wire element components. Now, they're going to come up with a better name than that, but that's what they were calling them to me last month, right? They said, well, they're wire element components. And if you use, these are mainly the UI5, the new UI5 components. And if you create a Webby report or dashboard using those components only, you have the ability to take a data set and embed it inside of the report or the dashboard, and then distribute that offline so that it remains interactive without being connected back to the Webby server. So it's a new way for distributing offline Webby reports, offline Webby dashboards, without having to connect back to business objects. And there's no license fees associated with that. So that becomes quite interesting if you were saying, well, I want to distribute this to our suppliers every month, but I don't want to give them a static report. I want to give them a report they can interact with, right? They can drill into, and so forth. So that's a kind of a nice new capability. And they also brought back the idea of the widgets, but these are more like KPI widgets on the BI Launchpad itself. So what you could do here is you could create a widget that could be a gauge or a dial that's showing you how many sales are coming in. And you can put that on your Launchpad, and it will just dynamically update whatever you put the timer to every 30 seconds, every 20 seconds, and change that number so that you're constantly seeing what's changing, right, on your BI Launchpad, which was a nice feature. Integration with Google Maps will improve geo-mapping, scrollable table, one of the many new components coming, and the formula editor for data mode for more data transforms that I talked about as well. They also have a very nice new tooltip capability, which I saw, where you could be looking at a table and you would take the tooltip over, say, 4 cells of the table, and it would automatically graph that for you inside the tooltip, which I thought was kind of cool. So some very, very nice visual capabilities there as well. So once you go to BI 2025, all these products disappear. They will no longer be delivered as part of 2025. And we already talked about, you know, the Mirror and Live Office. The big one that is going to affect most people is this one, the UMVs, right? So UMVs will no longer be supported. So you've got till the end of 2027 to get your old universes converted to the new UNX universes way over to the project. So today, business objects coexist as a standard with over 85% of BI customers running either Tableau, Power BI, or both. And it really is, you know, just a fact. SAP, to some degree, is in denial because they still think that SAC stands a chance of replacing Power BI and Tableau, but I think they missed the boat on that one. Meanwhile, Tableau, the Salesforce has decided to increase their prices, which has just made Power BI even more attractive for everyone. And right now, there is a mass exodus of Tableau customers to Power BI. It's kind of intriguing. We've got 3 projects we're running right now, converting Tableau dashboards to Power BI. Right? Kind of nuts, isn't it? But that's the way things go. We've also taken our Squirrel product, you know, which is our no-code application development tool, and it will work inside of Web Intelligence. It will also work inside of Tableau and work inside of Power BI, which makes it quite interesting as well. I mentioned about the cloud strategy already, so I won't spend any time on that. And as I said, 4.3 upgrades are in full force right now. You know, Service Pack 2 4.3 is generally stable. We patch 1,000 and above. I think we're up to about 1,400 right now. And SP3 patch 800 and above. And SP4 is still stabilizing. We recommend right now the latest patch 400 when we go to it. Okay, I got 2 very, very large global customers who had problems with both SP200 and 300, and they're now trying to get 400 stable. There you go, and some useful links we can make this available to you as well with all the features and functions that came out with all the different service packs in BI 4.3. Questions? I do apologize for overrunning.
Is it both Discovery and Designer that's being deprecated for
No,
2025, or is it just
no.
Discovery?
It's Discovery is being fully deprecated, and Designer will remain supported with no updates to it until the end of 2027. Okay, because 2 very influential customers, right, you know, made a lot of noise with certain areas of SAP.
No, the Mira Discovery versus the Mira Designer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Two
So
different products.
Designer will remain supported till the end of 20. Okay, yes.
From a customer perspective, just a few comments that you have on. With SAP now going to the 2+1 model, starting in 2025. We already know, based on SAP history, is don't jump in, wait. So are we down to a 2-year window? Or 2.5 years? And then for customers, is this create a migration scenario that they need to consider from traditional 4.2 to 4.3?
There's no migration required. They're not making substantial changes to calculation engines and webbing and things like that. So it's more add-on features than anything else. So existing reports will come across fine, but your point is a good one. And what I see happening is I see some customers will not even ever go to 2025. They'll just go straight to 2027.
Probably.
Right.
That's what I'm thinking.
You know, because of that cadence. So yes, you know, but the idea is that it should be seamless, right, between those releases. Yes.
Back in the day when we had 3.x, when we went to 4.x, we had to use that upgrade management tool. Same thing here?
No,
No.
no, promotion management will take care of what you need to do, because like I said, there's nothing fundamental changing in the structure,
Code-based.
right? Oh, yeah. And so therefore that won't be necessary. You should still do sample testing, of course, but it's not a full-scale migration. Okay, all right, Roxanne, over to you. Sorry, yeah.